Turning to other major news impacting life this week, the budget reconciliation bill. As of the time of this taping, the House is reviewing the bill that narrowly passed the Senate yesterday. The vote was 50-50 and Vice President J.D. Vance cast the tie-breaking vote for the Senate. The bill has multiple pro-life measures in it, including tax cuts, a child tax credit, a Trump account for newborns, and school choice. It also aims to defund Planned Parenthood for at least a year. Lawmakers are rushing to meet the July 4th deadline to pass the bill. Leah Libresco Sargeant, Senior Policy Analyst of the Niskanen Center, joins us now to talk about these pro-family measures in the budget reconciliation bill. Leah, this was a chaotic vote with things getting done at the 9th hour. Can you tell us, how did we get here and what is going on for families?
You know, I think there's some really good things for families on the tax side and some really hard things on the safety net side. And what really happened is this was a squeaker of a vote, and it's not clear what's going to happen in the House. And to get here, to get that last Senate vote from Senator Murkowski of Alaska, there needed to be specific buyouts for Alaska. And it kind of resulted in some pretty wacky policy no one would have designed from the get-go. So for example, Alaska now has specific carve-outs from some of the food stamp cuts that other states are going to see, but they couldn't do a Alaska-only cut. That doesn't work. So they had to find a criteria that satisfied Alaska, but almost no one else. And now it means that technically, we pay states a bonus to their food stamp bills if they have a high rate of improper payments, of paying out food stamps to people who don't earn them. This is pretty weird. They needed a solution, but I think we're going to find over the coming years there's a lot of weird compromises or kludges that have unexpected or undesired consequences.
Wow. Now, defunding Planned Parenthood is still in the bill. Can you share your first reaction, and is this a roadmap for future bills?
Yeah, so Planned Parenthood can no longer receive Medicaid payments. That means when they're doing a pap smear, when they're doing a blood test, anything like that, you know, the non-abortion services, those can no longer be covered by Medicaid. That takes a big bite out of what Planned Parenthood can do. Planned Parenthood does a lot of fundraising, but that money is dedicated almost solely to advocacy at the national level, which many donors don't know. It doesn't help defray the cost of those normal medical procedures for patients who come in. So without Medicaid, it's likely that states, you know, even Planned Parenthood, some blue states may need to close or pare back services. And that's actually part of why it's only a one-year freeze. This scores as deficit increasing. And you might think, you're not paying money from the federal government. How can that cost the government more? Because anticipated freezing money to Planned Parenthood will save babies' lives. Those babies, you know, need more care at birth and everything else. It scores as bad for the government on the fiscal side, but good on the life side, but that limits how long they can do it for in reconciliation.
Now, there was a big expansion to the child tax credit to keep up with inflation, which is great for families, but is it enough?
So this is one of the strongest family measures in the bill. What the CTC expansion does is it both raises the amount that parents get for their kids from $2,000 to $2,200. That's not as far as I would have liked to see. It leaves families behind where they were in President Trump's first term, which would have required raising them all the way to $2,500. But what's really good is this is a permanent increase that is indexed to inflation every year going forward. Until now, every year, parents saw their child tax credit cut until Congress did another periodic top-up. This is a much more stable setting for parents who need the CTC to take care of their kids.
That's great. A measure will require those receiving Medicaid benefits to find employment. What is the reality of tracking employment on such a large scale?
This is one of the parts that's a lot messier. So a third of people on Medicaid are kids. They obviously can't work. Only about 3% of Medicaid recipients are out of work for the long term. But the bill is scoring work requirements as saving a lot of money. You can't save that much money by just pushing the people who aren't working off of Medicaid. What's happened at the state level when states have tried to do this is while you're pushing off that small 3% who aren't working, you wind up losing a lot of people who are compliant with the rule as written, but don't get over the paperwork hurdle. The state doesn't have a record of who's working week to week. So when you're adding these reporting requirements, it takes a lot more staffing to verify. And if you don't keep pace, then families who are doing everything right get kicked off the rolls. And what you can see from the scoring of this bill as a cost saver, it assumes compliant families and kids are going to get kicked off. There aren't enough savings in the bill unless you're actually kicking people off Medicaid who are fully compliant with the work requirements.
Leah, I think a lot of what our conversation has illuminated is that these laws aren't perfect. There's a lot of compromise going on, and there's gonna, quite frankly, be a lot of cleanup that needs to be done. What is some things we should be looking for, or what are some avenues for hope for our viewers? And even what should they be doing to ensure that justice is done?
You know, I think one thing to remember is there's been a lot of hesitation expressed about the Medicaid cuts by members of the Republican caucus. So it's delayed until 2026. That's not very long to stand up a verification program at the state level. But I think the question is, will that get delayed further? You know, when people are thinking about how this will look, is there a fail-safe for if this isn't getting spun up in a way that will actually work? Will it get pushed back? Will it get revised? Will there be more funding to make it work in reality? And in the meantime, you know, we've pushed that child tax credit up, but you know, will it get a further boost next year? Will we get more of that money as a refundable credit that goes to the families that are doing everything right, but just don't owe enough income tax to fully benefit for their kids? That remains to be seen, but there's certainly an appetite for it in some parts of the caucus.
Great. Thank you so much, Leah, for being with us today.
My pleasure.